But to understand what is more important here as we head into an uncertain economic future, Chris Campbell joins us. He is the chief strategist at Duff and Phelps Institute. He's a former assistant Treasury secretary for financial institutions. He is joining us from Tampa, Florida. It's good to see you again, Chris.
Good morning, Adam. Good morning, all.
I'm going to start with FOMC, but I think we need to talk about stimulus. But since nobody expects anything major from the FOMC, is there a danger they may say something that surprises and upsets markets?
I very doubtful. I think that the thing that's going to be most interesting for me and for our clients is what as the prospective, what their outlook on the economy is, perhaps on interest rates and not interest rates, sorry, on inflation. But there's not. I mean, this is going to be. Everyone expects, and as do I, that this is not going to be there's not going to be a lot of news coming out of the FOMC, out of the Jay Powell this afternoon. Sorry.
Chris, so let's turn to something that is ongoing, where there's a bit more suspense, and that has to do with stimulus. Because we are still seeing the negotiations ongoing. It looks like at this point we're not going to make the deadline of when the current extra stimulus checks are stopping, which is the end of the month. The last ones actually went out on the 25th. So what's your expectation for the outcome? I mean, as someone who's a Washington veteran, where are we going to land on this thing?
Look, pulling the curtain back, no one likes to see how the sausage is actually made. But to talk in those terms, I think that typically parties tend to position going into negotiations, and the Democrats, I believe, felt like they had a pretty good negotiating position with the $600 federal bonus for unemployment insurance, a plus above $600. But Senator McConnell actually just recently, as you know, outlined a $1 trillion package, which includes a 70% income replacement for unemployment insurance. So it's still a federal bump up of about $200. I think that Democrats thought that the Republicans would be in a difficult spot should the unemployment insurance run out at the end of the month. Now that we're kind of in an better equal footing going into negotiations, I think that there's it's going to be a strong push starting today, as Adam outlined, with the administration and congressional leaders coming together, talking about this. Now, the speed of government is such that it's not fast. And 3 days time or 2 days time for the U.S. Senate is really that's a sprint. So look, I think there may be a 1 or 2 day lapse in unemployment benefits. I don't think it'll be more than that. And plus, having worked in Congress for as long as I did, I know that members of Congress are going to want to get home for August. Washington can be a very difficult spot at times, so they're going to want to go home and be with their constituents, and so there's going to be a lot of pressure to get this done. Again, I don't think they'll meet the deadline for the 31st, but I think it may lapse a couple of days, but not more than that.
Chris, it's Julia LaRoche. And of course, when we talk about stimulus, a lot of it has to do with just kind of stopping the bleeding, if you will, from the economic impacts from COVID-19. Of course, we're going to get GDP numbers, so we'll get a bit more clarity on that. My question for you is, what do you think is missing from stimulus, especially as it relates to catalyzing growth? I know we have to kind of mend the situation, but how do you think about the growth going forward and how we can stimulate there?
Yeah, look, it's a brilliant question. I think that the challenge is this. I think in a purely economically speaking, there are things you can do to stimulate the economy, but you have to overlay that with what's political reality. And so the reality is that the people who are suffering most are the people who are at the lower end of the economic scale, individuals and small business. Small business is I think the best thing where I think brings both Republicans and Democrats together to get something done, and a shot in the arm there. They employ so many Americans, and that's where the economic churn or economic, they spend so much money and employ so many people, and people shop there as well. So really getting a shot in the arm to the PPP program and direct government loan programs to the Small Business Administration, those are really kind of where the target should be. Look, I think also it's important that there are so many Americans now that are unable to pay their rent and candidly struggling to pay for food. And so the $1,200 stimulus check that most Americans will get is very important at this time as well. Overlaying all this, though, is some significant economic challenges, right? The U.S. dollar is in a weak position now. We're taking on debt at a rate that no one would have ever imagined, which is going to be a real challenge for the Fed, the Federal Reserve, and other things as we move forward. And so the economy presents a significant challenge, but to triage, you have to have stimulus, both fiscal and monetary. And the Fed, I think, is going back to Adam's earlier point. The Fed's, I think, going to suggest that they're going to continue providing a lot of liquidity to the markets, as is Congress. And we have to get through this. If perchance, and no one wants this, but if perchance we have to close again, we're going to be in a really difficult challenge.
On that note, we say thank you, Chris Campbell, Chief Strategist at Duff and Phelps Institute. And it's always good to get your insights since you've been on the front lines of these issues when you were a former Assistant Treasury Secretary for Financial Institutions. All the best to you.